Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today when you chant, just chant the first sloka, don't chant both. Shri Parada Uvacha Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atma Nivedanam Iti Pumsar Pita Vishnu Bhaktische Navalakshana Kriyate Bhagavata Yadha Tanmanye Dititam Uttamam. Chant. Ladies? E.T. Thus. No. Sri Parada Uvacha. Prahlad Maharaj said, Shravanam, hearing, Kirtanam, chanting, Vishnu, of Lord Vishnu, not anyone else. Shramana, remembering, Padasevanam, serving the feet, Archanam, offering worship, the 16 kinds of paraphernalia, Vadanam, offering prayers, Dasyam, becoming the servant, Sakyam, becoming the best friend, Atmanivedanam, surrendering everything, whatever one has, E.T., thus, Pumsa Arpita, offered by the devotee, Vishnu, unto Lord Vishnu, not to anyone else. Bhakti, devotional service. Chet, if, Navalakshana, possessing 9 different processes. Kriyata, one should perform. Bhagavati, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ada, directly or completely. Tat, that. Manye, I consider. Aditam, learning. Uttamam, topmost. So I'll read the translation. I'll just read it, you don't have to repeat. Prahlad Maharaj said, hearing and chanting about the transcendental holy name, form, qualities, paraphernalia, and pastimes of Lord Vishnu, remembering them, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering the Lord respectful worship with 16 types of paraphernalia, offering prayers to the Lord, becoming his servant, considering the Lord one's best friend, and surrendering everything to him, in other words, serving him with body, mind, and words. These 9 processes are accepted as pure devotional service. Now listen to the last line. One who has dedicated his life to the service of Krishna through these 9 methods should be understood to be the most learned person, for he has acquired complete knowledge. So by following these processes, all the knowledge you need to know for perfection in life and even for material success is found in these 9 processes. Okay, and of course the most important is chanting, and running a close second is hearing. Hearing and chanting is the most important. So we have done Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smarnam, Padasevanam. Now the next one is Archanam, and the discussion in the Bhagavatam on Archanam is about 6 pages long. So we don't think we can go through all those 6 pages, but we can try to capture the essence. Okay. After Padasevanam, one comes to the process of Archanam, worship of the deity. If one is interested in the process of Archanam, one must positively take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and learn how to worship the deity from him. There are many books of Archanam, especially Narada Pancharatra. In this age, the Pancharatra system is practically recommended for Archanam deity worship. There are 2 kinds of systems of Archanam, the Bhagavat system and the Pancharatriki system. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is no recommendation of Pancharatriki worship because in this age of Kali, even without deity worship, everything can be perfectly performed simply through hearing, chanting, remembering, and worshipping of the lotus feet of the Lord. Rupa Goswami says, quote, Pariksha Maharaj attained salvation simply by hearing, and Sukadev Goswami attained salvation simply by chanting. Prahlad Maharaj attained salvation by remembering the Lord. The goddess of fortune Lakshmi Devi attained perfection by worshipping the Lord's lotus feet. Prithu Maharaj attained salvation by worshipping the deity of the Lord. Akrura attained salvation by offering prayers. Hanuman by rendering service. Arjun by establishing friendship with the Lord. And Bali Maharaj by offering everything to the Lord. Excuse me. All these great devotees served the Lord according to a particular process, but every one of them attained salvation because and became eligible to return home back to Godhead. It is therefore recommended that initiated devotees follow the principles of Pancharatriki by worshiping the deity in the temple, especially for householder devotees who are opulent in material possessions. The path of deity worship is strongly recommended. An opulent householder devotee who does not engage his hard-earned money in the service of the Lord is called a miser. One should not engage paid brahmas to worship the deity. If one does not personally worship the deity but engages paid servants instead, he is considered lazy. Haribol. And his worship of the deity is called artificial. An opulent householder can collect luxurious paraphernalia for deity worship, and consequently for householders, devotees, the worship of the deity is compulsory. So for those who are in the Grihastha ashram, deity worship is compulsory, either within the temple or at home in a regulated way. But it must be done. And then Prabhupada will go on to explain why. Krishna conscious movements therefore are brahmacharis, grihastas, vanapras, and sannyas. But the deity worship in the temple should be performed especially by the householders. The brahmacharis can go with the sannyasis to preach, and the vanaprastas should prepare themselves for the next status of renounced life, sannyas. Grihastha devotees, however, are generally engaged in material activities, and this is the point here, and therefore, if they do not take to deity worship, their falling down is positively assured. So, if you're working and you're not doing deity worship, you're fallen. Even if you're doing other things. Deity worship is essential for householders. Deity worship means following the rules and regulations precisely. That doesn't mean brahmacharis and sannyasis can't worship the deities, but it's recommended that the householders must. By doing that, one will stay steady in devotional service. Generally, householders have children, and then wives of the householders should be engaged in caring for the children, just as women acting as teachers care for children in a nursery school. Grihastha devotees must adopt the archana vidhi or deity worship according to the suitable arrangements and directions given by the spiritual master. Regarding those unable to take the deity worship in the temple, there is the following statement in the Agni Purana. Any householder devotee circumstantially unable to worship the deity must at least see the deity worship. In this way, he may achieve success also. The special purpose of deity worship is to keep oneself always pure and clean. Grihastha devotees should be actual examples of cleanliness. Deity worship should be continued along with hearing and chanting. Therefore, every mantra is preceded by the word Namaha. In all the mantras, there are specific potencies of which the Grihastha devotees must take advantage. There are many mantras preceded by the word Namaha, but if one chants the holy name of the Lord, he receives results of chanting Namaha many times. By chanting the holy name of the Lord, one can reach the platform of love of God. One must ask, then, why is it necessary to be initiated? The answer is that even though the chanting of the holy name is sufficient to enable one to progress in spiritual life to the standard of love of God, one is nonetheless susceptible to contamination because of possessing a material body. Consequently, special stress is given on the archana vidhi. One should therefore regularly take advantage of both the Bhagavat process and the Pancharatriki process. Deity worship has two divisions, namely pure and mixed with fruitive activities. For one who is steady, deity worship is compulsory. Observing the various kinds of festivals such as Janmastami, Ramnavami, and the Shringar Chaturdasi is also included in the process of deity worship. In other words, it's compulsory for household devotees to observe these festivals. Okay, so we'll stop there. Now, Prabhupada will list the 64 offenses so we can go on. Om Gyan Timidandasya Gyana Jila Salakaya Chaksu Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavari Pastyatya De Sadari Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Pevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So there's many statements throughout the Pancharatriki Vidhi, and even Srila Prabhupada includes much in the Srimad Bhagavatam. As it says that simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and engaging in practical devotional service, one can attain perfection. But in this age of Kali, it's a very dark and difficult age to keep focused on the process of bhakti. Therefore, in order to purify oneself and to develop those qualities that are conducive to the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, one must purify themselves and raise their consciousness to the mode of goodness. And that can be done by deity worship. That can be done by deity worship. So, Prabhupada would say, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and worshipping the form of the Lord in the temple are like two tracks on the transcendental train. Both of them especially in this age, and that's the emphasis, are necessary. In previous ages, just like in the Dwapara Yuga, the means for self-realization was deity worship. Those who practice deity worship, according strictly, because in deity worship, you can't make any mistakes. If you make mistakes, they're considered to be digressions and also leading to offenses. So the rules and regulations of deity worship are quite precise and strict in worshiping the deity. Those of you who do, you know how precise everything is with mantras and offerings. Everything has to be done very carefully, on time, with revolutionary level of cleanliness. Super clean. So clean that you can't find a speck of dust anywhere. So this type of worship is required in order to purify one's consciousness so we can chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. It keeps our focus on the deity. We can't see Krishna. Krishna is ahoksaja. He's beyond the range of the senses. But he manifests himself in his deity form as a mercy manifestation. Therefore, the deity is called Archa Vigra, incarnation. The Lord has incarnated in the form of the deity. The deity is the Lord. Sometimes, even devotees mistakenly think that the deity is a representation of the Lord. But there is a verse, Arche Vishnu, Siladi Gurushu Nurmati, Vaishnava Jati Bhuti. It's a long verse, goes on. But it ends by saying Naraki. Naraki means hell. So those who think that the deity is made out of stone or wood or some material from the material energy or some metal or whatever, and don't understand that actually Krishna is non-different than the deity. He is the deity. The deity is him. Their intelligence is what we say crippled type of intelligence. So the deity is not simply a representation of the Lord, it is the Lord. And there are many pastimes where the deities walk, the deities talk, the deities eat. We can speak all day about these pastimes. There's so many. Just like there's one deity in Vrindavan. His name is Banki Bihari. You've heard of Banki Bihari? They have his Mangal Arti at 10 o'clock in the morning. Because many years before that, when they would go to wake him up, he wouldn't be there. They put him to rest at night, and then when they come in the morning to open up the doors, he'd be gone. And then later on he'd show up. So they were... And finally the deity told him, he said, I'm out all night, and then I get tired. I need a little rest before I come back. So he's performing his pastimes in the groves of Vrindavan, and he comes back in the morning. And so for him to get up at 4 o'clock is too early. So they switched his Mangal Arti to 10. They actually did it through gradations. They did it a little earlier, a little later, then finally they stopped at 10 o'clock. So now he's present. He gets sufficient rest. So that's one particular deity. He's still there. You can go see him. There are many, many other leelas of the Lord, how he interacts with his devotees, especially with his pure devotees. I remember in 1996, I think it was, there was a wave throughout the entire ISKCON society where during the Chaturmasya, the deity was drinking the milk. So they were offering the milk onto the altar, and when they would come back, the cups would be empty. I don't know, you remember that, Radhesham? This is 1996. Yeah. So, and people were getting news reports, even not only in ISKCON temples, but in other temples also. Other Hindu temples were also having the same experience. And so people were getting quite, the deity's he's eating. So one time I was sitting in my room in Chicago. I was resident sannyasi in the Chicago temple. And one man, he came in, he was really excited. He said, "Oh, he's eating, he's eating, he's eating." I said, "Well, he eats every day." He doesn't fast. But now he's now he's not as merciful as he used to be. He's not leaving you any. So we had to explain that, these types of activities are for people who have little faith. So in order to increase the faith of the faithless, or those who have, what we say, meager faith, sometimes the Lord will do that. But he's eating every day. He says, "Pratam pushpam palam talyam, yomi bhakti panachyati, tadaham bhakti uparitam asnami payatatmanaha." Asnami means I eat. He eats. But he doesn't eat like we eat. There's a story in the life of Sri Chaitanya. This is after Lord Chaitanya. There was one devotee, his name was, what was his name? Boy, I'm bad with names. Someone help me with that one. His father's name was Surakeli. Not Goridas, no. Raghunandana. So Raghunandana, he was the son of, Govinda, Mukunda Surakela. Yeah. So one day, his father told him, you should learn how to worship the deity. And so he was an obedient boy, so his father instructed him everything. And then he left, because he was a doctor. And then his mother was giving him everything. He was a young boy, he was only 5 years old at the time. So he took the tray and was I think it was some milk and some laddu into the deity room. He put it down. And he, offered it. And then when it was over, he came out and there was nothing on the tray. His mother said, "What happened? Where's the prasadam?" He said, "Well, the Lord ate it." He was special, this boy, because when he did the offering, the Lord was so pleased that he actually ate it. And when his father heard that, he couldn't believe it. So the next day, they let him offer again. And his father, Mukunda, was hiding to see what was happening, and the same thing happened again. But this time, he only drank half the cup of milk and ate half the laddu. So when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was talking to Mukunda, he said, "Mukunda, who's the father and who's the son? Your son is Raghunandana and you're the father, but who's the father and who's the son?" So the father is the one who teaches. So that was the principle. So yes, and Mukunda said, "Yes, Raghunandana, he is my father. I'm actually learning from him." So he was such an amazing young Vaishnava. There's many stories about him. And there's even within the ISKCON society, there are many pastimes of the deities talking, walking. Sometimes when the deity worship is so much neglected, or there are so many offenses in the deity worship, you open the curtain and he's gone. It's happened. Deities that just disappear. Or sometimes they burn up, or someone comes in and steals the deity. Because the Lord says, "Get me out of here." So somebody comes and steals him. So when the deity worship falls down to such a low level of standard, when practically there's no standard, then the Lord will leave. Or do something to indicate that he's not very happy with the deity worship. So the Lord is personally present. So when we're worshiping the Lord, we should also understand that He's there. Prabhupada said, it's not that He is some stone or some idol or something. He's Krishna. And he said you have to be very, very careful when dealing with Krishna. And that's His mercy. He comes in this form so He allows His devotees to wake Him up, to bathe Him, to dress Him, to feed Him, to offer worship to Him, and of course, to put Him to rest also. So in the mood of a parent, the devotee is serving the Lord just like a parent would serve their child. So it's very intimate deity worship. And it should be taken very, 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 very seriously. When you have your deities at home, it's understood that the deity becomes the proprietor of the home. And you're the guest. It's his place. And then anything you need to do, or any decision you need to make that requires some seriousness about it, you present yourself in front of the deity and you ask the Lord, how should we do it? What should we do? Whether we should do it or not. And then the Lord will indicate in one way what is the answer, like that. We have the story of Sakshi Gopal. That's a long story. It's really long. But two Brahmins, one young Brahmin, one old Brahmin from the same village. The older Brahmin was quite wealthy. The young Brahmin was very poor. And they went to see, Gopal? In Vrindavan. And they came, and during the time they were traveling, they traveled a long way. They were traveling from Vidyanagar in Bengal all the way to Vrindavan. And the young Brahmin served the old Brahmin very nicely. He took care of all of his needs. And the old Brahmin was very, very pleased with the young Brahmin. The Brahmin took great inconveniences to make sure the older Brahmin got everything he needed nicely in the travel. And so, when they came to see Gopal, they were both standing there. And the old Brahmin was thinking, this boy served me so nicely. I want to reward him in some way. So the boy wasn't married, and the old Brahmin, he had a young daughter who was of marriageable age. So he said, because you have, served me so nicely, put inside your own, conveniences to serve me nicely, I want to offer my young daughter in marriage to you. The young Brahmin was thinking, what is he saying? He's coming from a very aristocratic, wealthy family, and I am just, a simple Brahmin. I have hardly anything. How am I going to take care of this girl? At the same time, the family members, the village elders will never allow this marriage to happen. So he said to the old Brahmin, I think you should not make that promise, because your wife, your children, the village elders, none of them will agree, and you will not be able to do it. He said, the old Brahmin said, she's my daughter, and I'm in charge, therefore I want to give her to you. Now the young Brahmin was thinking, all right, but before we leave, you have to promise in front of Gopal that you're going to make this happen. So the old Brahmin came in and said, my dear Gopal, I want to give my young daughter in marriage to this young Brahmin. Please be the witness for this, this promise. And then they left. And of course, when he got back to his village, nobody agreed. They thought the old Brahmin had gone crazy. They thought the young Brahmin had given him some daturi and made him intoxicated, and therefore cheated him out of his money and made him say that. They came up with all kinds of crazy stories. And his wife said, well, if you give our daughter to that boy, I'm going to commit suicide. She was serious. And so now he's really in a real difficult situation. And so even his son said, what is this boy saying? He just wants to, take advantage. So he convinced his father to say he didn't remember anything. So when the young boy came to claim the girl for marriage, the son of the Brahmin, he picked up a stick. He said, who do you think you could marry my sister? Get out of here. And he chased him out with a stick. But then he went to the villagers and said, well, he made a promise. And he promised before Gopal in Vrindavan. And Gopal is the witness. But I'm not so eager to have his daughter for my wife, but because he made a promise in front of the deity, if he doesn't fulfill his promise, he will incur a great sin. So I want to protect him from that. So the village elders said, well, if he made the promise in front of Gopal, then bring Gopal here and he'll be the witness. So the young boy was thinking, a deity walking? Anyway, he went. So he traveled all the way back to Vrindavan, stood in front of Gopal, offered prayers. He said, my dear Gopal, now that old Brahmin, he's reneging on his promise, and I don't want him to suffer. He'll have to go to hell for making this promise and not keeping his vow. So please come and be the witness. He's talking to the deity. And then Gopal responds. He said, I'm a deity. I can't walk. And then he said, well, if you can talk, you can walk. So Prabhupada's explaining this story. He said, Krishna was defeated. And so he said, all right, I'll come. But you walk in front of me and you don't look back. And every day you cook me 1 kilo of rice and offer it to me. And you'll know that I'm behind you because you'll hear the sound of my ankle bells. But if you look back, I'm not going to go any farther. So he's cooking the rice, offering it, giving it to Gopal without looking back. The deity's following, he's hearing the ankle bells. They get right near the village of Vidyanagar, and then he doesn't hear the ankle bells anymore. And then he turns around, and there's Gopal standing there. And then Gopal says to him, call everyone. So they all come, and the deity gave witness. When they saw that deity, they understood, yes, that boy was telling the truth, and the marriage took place. That deity is there now. He's called Sakshi Gopal. Sakshi means witness. There's a temple there. You can go and see him. And it's the same deity. It's been there. He's been in the hands of different kings for worship, and now he's established in his own temple. It's about 6 hours from Jagannath Puri. I went there, but I couldn't get in because I don't have a tan, I'm too pale looking. They don't let malechas in. They only let people from the Indian communities to come in. But anyway, all of you can go. He's such an amazing deity, very big deity, right? He's really big. So, yeah. So that same deity was the one deity who walked. That was many thousands of years ago, actually. So Krishna's there in the form of the deity. And to worship the deity, really, to take darshan of the deity. Darshan, what does the word darshan mean? Darshan comes from the word drishtya. There is drishtya and drashtya. Drishtya means to see, and drashtya means to be seen. So darshan means one who is seeing and one who is being seen. So who is seeing and who is being seen? Krishna is seeing and you're being seen. That's darshan. He's looking at you. That's darshan. So presenting yourself in front of the deity in the proper mood is actually darshan. Bhaktisiddhanta one time, he came before the deity and he had forgotten his glasses. And so one of his assistants, his brahmachari, he said, Guru Maharaj, I'll get your glasses. He said, never mind, what can we see? We have to be seen by Krishna. We are not, what can we see? So what he was saying is, Krishna is there, but how much can you see? He's actually personally there. And the proper mood, when the curtains open, Prabhupada has given us a particular standard for welcoming the deity. When the conch shell blows and the curtains open, you stand there with folded hands, and then when the curtains open, you gaze at the lotus feet of the Lord. You take your gaze upward to his smiling face, down, and then you pay obeisances. That's how you approach the deity, and not like as soon as the curtains open, you dive. Radharani says, where'd they go? Oh, they're down there. Oh, yeah. Not like that. So we welcome the deity by greeting the deity when he appears, and not just, like diving into the ocean or something. So that's the standard. And also, when you're standing there, what do? Sometimes you think, It's a little more than that. It's that there's three things that you should communicate to the deity while you're there. One, my dear Lord, you are so kind, you're so merciful, and you can describe some of the qualities of the Lord and offer those qualities in praise of the Lord. In other words, you offer your praise to the Lord. That's one thing you do. The second thing is you say, my dear Lord, I'm so fallen. I'm so low. I don't have any bhakti. Please give me your mercy. We're begging for mercy. And the third thing, and is the most important, please engage me in your service. So these three things are darshan. These are actual darshan. That way, when you actually meet the Lord, there's an exchange between you and the Supreme Lord in a very devotional way, like that. So that is, these things are given to us by Srila Prabhupada. But deity worship, and we have deities of Radha and Krishna, that's Vrindavan. We have deities of Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, that is Vrindavan in separation. We have deities of Gaur Nitai, that is also Vrindavan, Mayapur being non-different than Vrindavan. But we're not worshipping in the mood of Vrindavan. We're worshipping in the mood of Vaikuntha. Because we worship with opulence. We worship in the mood of awe and reverence. But Krishna in Vrindavan, you don't worship in awe and reverence. You worship him in the mood of madhurya, or sweetness. Whereas the residents of Vrindavan, they interact with Krishna as being the most beautiful and loving boy in Vrindavan, and they serve him in different ways. But there's no awe and reverence. But therefore, in deity worship, awe and reverence has to be there. So although it is the mood of Vrindavan on the altar, it's the mood of Vaikuntha, or Aishwarya Bhav, worship in opulence, for the sake of purification. And then it says that after purifying yourself through the process of worship and chanting the holy name, Krishna will reveal himself more and more in the deity. Krishna is there in his full manifestation. He's not like, he's in Vaikuntha or he's in Vrindavan and he's just partially here. No, he's fully here. According to the level, Yayatam mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanu vartante manushya parsha sarvarsya. In other words, according to the level of your devotion and the mood of worship, Krishna reveals himself accordingly. Prabhupada was standing with one gentleman. He was a visitor. And they're both looking at the altar. Prabhupada turns to the man. He said, if you could see, you can see that Radha and Krishna are having their pastimes right now, right on the altar. Prabhupada could see, but nobody else could see. Because premanjaritam bhakti vilochanena santa sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti yam sama sundara chinta guna sarupam govindam haripurusham tamaham bhajami. So the more you develop love for Krishna, the more Krishna reveals himself, both in the holy name and in the deity also, especially the deity, like that. So Jagannath's there, Balaram's there, all of the Lord's there. They're non-different than their manifestation in the spiritual world. So be very careful if you're doing pujari work. And also when we're in front of the deities, we should also observe certain etiquette. Talking in front of the deities, ordinary conversation about, things that we need to do is considered to be an offense, even in the temple. If you're sitting in the temple and the deity curtains open, if you're sitting with your arms over your legs, that is considered an offense. In other words, if you have your arms wrapped around your legs and your legs are up, that is an offense if you're sitting in a temple. If you are talking loudly when the curtains are open, that is also an offense. If you're chastising someone, that's also an offense in the temple. So I didn't read it, but Prabhupada said, now let us discuss the offenses to deity worship. And it's very long. There's 64 offenses. There's 44 things to do and 20 things to not to do. Things to avoid, nishedas, and things to do, vidis. Vidis and nishedas, things to do, things not to do. It's very strict when it comes to deity worship. And Prabhupada gave us really a high level of deity worship, which was pretty much criticized by many persons, particularly in the Gaudiya Math, Prabhupada's godbrothers and others, because he was preaching in countries with people, Westerners, who had no idea what a deity is, nor how to treat the deity properly. But Prabhupada took a chance, because he knew if they could develop it nicely, it would help them to purify their consciousness where they can really come to the platform of chanting purely. So deity worship in and itself is bhakti, and one, as it says here, one can become perfect simply by worshiping the deity. But in our society, it's very supportive in the chanting of the holy name and in understanding the transcendental knowledge given to us in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, like that. So therefore, worshiping the deity. And we see how the deity is so gorgeously decorated. It has to be like that. Sometimes ordinary people criticize, why don't you use the money to feed the poor? Instead of using all of that money to get opulences for the deity. Or they don't say deity, they say something else. But we say Krishna deserves the best. And to give him the best is an expression of our bhakti for him. Everything should be the best. Everything should be nicely done, beautiful clothes, jewelry, the best of all prepared bhoga to be offered to the deities. Everything should be high quality like that. And sometimes because people criticize like that, It's not that they say you should feed the poor. They're really saying you should give it to me. That's the underlying thing. They get envious that the deity's getting all the opulence. Like that. So yeah. And there's many, many stories. I mean, we can talk about deity worship all day. There are many, many. But these are just basic principles. Now, deity worship doesn't mean those are on the altar. That means all of us, when the deity opens, that mood of worship begins. And one should always be right in the proper mood in front of the deities. If you're chanting the glories of the Lord, that is the proper mood. If you are engaged in some service, that is also the proper mood. The temple is not a place to hang out and just meet your friends so you can make plans for doing something later. That's not the temple. The temple is for actually purifying our heart by seeing the deity. And of course, it says that when you come to the temple, you should always bring a gift for the Lord. It could be a flower, something simple, or you can write a check with a lot of zeros on the end. In other words, you should offer something. As Krishna says, patram pushram palam talyam. So that's traditional. At least it goes back to hundreds of years ago when people would come to the deity, they would always bring something. They'd always bring something. And the most important room is the temple room because that's where the deity resides. So the temple room is the house of the deity. So when we come in, we knock on the door. You don't just walk in, say, here I am, you know. You have to knock. Some temples, they have the chimes, but some places they have these bells, you hit the bells, but people were hitting the bells so hard that the bells fell off. So here the devotees know what will happen, so they don't have the bells. So you need to knock on the door when you come in. That means you're announcing your arrival into the Lord's home. This is like if you go to somebody's house, I mean, if you don't know them so good, you usually knock on the door, right? I'm here. Not like you just walk in. So in the same way, we approach the deity's room by announcing ourselves like that. I remember in Mayapur, they used to have these bells on the Panchatattva door, but people were hitting the bells so hard that they broke the bells. So it's not. So they had to take it off. So, but still, we have to knock. Some kind of. You have to make a sound. That's also mentioned. And when you come in like that. Jai Sri Sri Gaurnathai ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Vrindavan Chandra ki Jai Sri Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki Jai Tulsi Maharani ki Jai. Okay, so any questions, comments centered around deity worship? Yes, Mataji, way in the back there, yeah. I forgot your name, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. Okay. Here comes the microphone.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, thank you for the wonderful class. And the spiritual name that my spiritual master has given me is Krishna Rupa.
Krishna Rupa.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, you mentioned that if we do not do deity worship properly, then the deities disappear.
I mean, when the standard falls way down, it's not like Krishna is not going to disappear right away. But if you allow that type of neglect, or what we say, if you keep the place unclean. You don't worship on time. In other words, there's people who are on the altar are not actually acting properly. In other words, when the standard really falls low, not just a little, but really goes down, then there are incidents where the deity has left him. And it's always due to not keeping no standard practically at all.
So my question is that how will I know that my home deities are happy or not happy with myself?
You can ask them.
I'm not so pure that it will be revealed.
But you're Krishna Rupa, you should be able to do it. No problem.
So
I came to your house, I know. So, I'm sure, after seeing your altar, I saw how happy they looked. So keep it going. They look very happy.
I was just worried when you mentioned that, it was an alarm for me, where you said that, the deity gives some indication that whether he's happy. And all these years I've been worshipping, I never even bothered to see whether my deities are happy, not happy. And I was just thinking that, oh, here is Maharaj saying that whether the deities are happy or not. And I was never concerned with their happiness. It was just me and my, sense gratification.
If you want to see whether Jagannath's being served nicely, you check with Balaram, because he's in charge of making sure Jagannath gets the best. And if you want to know whether Krishna's getting, check with Radharani. She makes sure Krishna gets nice. If you ask Krishna, he's always satisfied.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, we have our...
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Okay. Where's our devotee to select the different persons? He's not here today? He's on vacation. He's on the altar? Okay, he decided to perform deity worship. He went to Vaishnava worship to deity worship. Could someone come up, any devotee, the local devotee, and we need someone to choose the different devotees who have their hands up, raised, because I can't choose. I don't know how to do that. Yeah, Yugala, you want to do it? Okay. Okay, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Thank you so much for your Nectarian class series. Please accept my most humble and respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet as servant of your servant. Maharaj, there is one pastime in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami got permission from the deities in a way that deities dropped their garland.
Deities dropped their flower garland.
Garland.
Yeah.
So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami got permission to write CC.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes if flower drops from the hand of deities or something like that, we take it as Krishna is happy with us and all. So how to understand this?
That's what Krishna does. Don't try to understand it, and just be happy.
So is it really like Krishna is reciprocating, or it's like our just thinking?
Yeah. There's some indication, but whether you know the indication or not, that's depends on your level of bhakti. But there's some meaning, when the deity drops the flower or the garland, there's some reason for that. But whether you know it or not, that's another thing.
And Maharaj, at what stage of bhakti will deities reciprocate to us, bhava or prem?
You just worship the deity nicely, that's all. You don't worry about all these other things.
So irrespective of stages, deities will reciprocate to us? Irrespective of stages of bhakti, deities will reciprocate.
Well, he's reciprocating, as he says, ye yatam mam prapadyante. As you approach me, I reward you accordingly. Prabhupada says Krishna is like a mirror. In other words, what you show in front of the mirror is reflected in the mirror. So what you offer to Krishna, Krishna will reciprocate.
And Maharaj, in that
Don't
Bhagavad...
try to figure it out.
Okay, Maharaj.
You'll be there all day.
So, one of the offenses, 64 offenses, as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, is...
What is the offense?
One of the offenses, 64 offenses, is crying in front of deities. But sometimes we cry out of love, and sometimes expressing our heart and mind.
Well,
So
if it's natural,
But
if
it is
it comes
considered as
natural,
offense.
then that's. But if there's some Babajis, they just eat chilies and then they go in front of the deities and cry, just to make a show. I think we call them chili babas. We don't want that. Or some people, they eat ginger, you know. They eat a lot of ginger and then they do puja and they start crying. So if it's real, that's one thing. If it's some kind of pretense, then that's a show. That's an offense.
Okay, Maharaj. And Maharaj,
Okay, well, we got other devotees, so
Okay.
we'll get back to you. Yeah, that's some of the other devotees. Okay. I'll tell you a nice story about how the deity reciprocated with one person. This was in Vrindavan. I'll tell you that later. Question?
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Please accept.
So Maharaj, the purport it is written that in the Archana there are two parts, Bhagavat Vidhi and Pancharatri Vidhi. But these all the 9 processes are themselves the part of Bhagavat Vidhi.
Little slower, little slower.
The 9 processes of bhakti which we have seen,
Right.
they are part of Bhagavat Vidhi. They are bhakti process, right? Devotional process.
Yeah, Bhagavad Dharma, yeah.
But in one of the purported line it is written that Bhagavat Vidhi itself is a part of Archana. Archana has 2 parts, Bhagavat and Pancharatri.
That's what Prabhupada writes, yeah.
Then what is the difference between this Bhagavat Vidhi, which is a part of Archana, and that Bhagavat Vidhi of which all the 9 are part?
Radhisham, you want to tackle that question? I don't know the answer. I don't really know the answer. Give Radhisham Prabhu the mic.
Hare Krishna. Actually, when we hear about Pancharatri Vidhi, Narada Pancharatra, and the deity worship which happens inside the altar, as far as I know, Prabhupada says that is done to not forget Krishna. And the Bhagavat Vidhi, when we say hearing and chanting, Shravanam Kirtanam, that is done to remember Krishna. Always remember Krishna. That's the main difference. Because when we see in the altar, the pujari, he has to be punctual, he has to be clean, he has to be disciplined, he has to be sober, he has to, his behavior. There are almost 8-10 very important Brahminical qualities are required to do that. But for doing Bhagavat Vidhi, you don't need any qualification. Even a Dasiputra could sit and hear Bhagavatam.
Right. Okay. Okay. Next, you choose somebody. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah. Mataji, we'll get back to you a little later. You'll get your chance. But not now. Not one coming up. Yes.
Hare Krishna
Who's got-
Maharaj.
Yeah, where are you?
Please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you Maharaj for such an enlivening class. Maharaj, I know that how Parikshit Maharaj attained salvation by hearing and Sukdev Goswami by speaking. But I would like to know more, how Prithu Maharaj attained salvation by worshipping the deities. Maybe it is mentioned somewhere in the specific verses of Srimad Bhagavatam or in any other scriptures. I would like to know more.
It says his deity worship was so glorious and so opulent that he actually attracted the demigods. But it doesn't get so specific in describing the deity worship. But it's mentioned in Sri Upanishads that he became perfect in that way. So he's a Shaktivesh avatar. And he came to reestablish worship of the Lord, which had been neglected by his father, who was King Vena, who was not up to the standard, to say the least. So yeah, he revived deity worship and made it actually quite glorious. The details you have to probably search other places to find the details. A lot of times Bhagavatam doesn't go into a lot of extra details. It gets to the essence of the principles that it's. But it doesn't. The details are not so much mentioned in Bhagavatam.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah. Mataji, you have your microphone there? Okay.
Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances onto your lotus feet, Maharaj. Really thank you for the series of hearing, chanting. It's been helping me a lot these days. So my question was, is there any difference between bhakti and prema?
Bhakti and prema?
Yes.
Prema is the perfection of bhakti. Bhakti is on different levels. When bhakti becomes mature or complete, then it manifests as prema bhakti. There's bhava bhakti, there's sadhana bhakti. There are different categories of the same essence. The essence is serving the Lord with a desire to please the Lord, free from motivation. That's bhakti. And Rupa Goswami gives the definition of bhakti. Ayabila sita sunyam jnana kamadanarvritam anukulena Krishna silanam bhakti uttamam. To serve the Lord with a desire to please the Lord, free from any desire for fruit of activity or gain by philosophical speculation. That's pure devotional service. And that is the and then prema bhakti is the goal. But in prema bhakti, there are 8 stages of prema, all the way up to Mahabhav, which is the highest stage of prema bhakti. So when you speak about bhakti, you can speak about it in relationship to different categories of bhakti, different levels of practice of bhakti. But prema is the goal, ultimately. Okay?
Yes. And actually, when we perform bhakti, there are many obstacles, and one of that is attachment. So, how do we deal with that? Although we try to not maintain attachment, somehow or other, we end up doing that.
By executing our devotional service, we're meant to Chaito Darpana Marjan, and we're meant to purify the heart where material attachments will gradually become less and eventually disappear. 2 things. 1, don't try to fulfill material desires. And 2, stay engaged in devotional service. And gradually these attachments will go. They'll go. If you're performing devotional service and still fulfilling your material attachments, it's going to be very slow. Very slow, very slow. But just say no to Maya and yes to Krishna. You have to understand what is bhakti and what is not bhakti. And what is not bhakti is mentioned, things that Rupa Goswami explains in Nectar of Instructions, those things that destroy bhakti. And he also mentions those things that are necessary for bhakti to develop. So we have to hear. This is a long subject matter. So, but in essence, learn what is your material attachments and distance yourself from those attachments. Don't try to fulfill them. And stay engaged in devotional service.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for giving such a nice class. Many of my doubts regarding deity worship got clear, but I had one doubt. Without Brahminical initiation, we cannot worship a deity on altar. But while sitting in the temple hall, if we worship deity mentally and commit some mistake while worshipping deity mentally, will we get any offenses?
What do you mean by mistake?
Mistake means if we miss something, like we miss offering argya or some sequence.
In the temple room?
Yes, but we are not on the altar. We are just mentally offering the deities, doop, deep, everything.
No offense. There's no offense.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. This here. Hare Krishna. Maharaj. Maharaj, just one question I had. Like sometimes atheists or other religion people, they destroy temples and deities just to destroy faith. Some invaders who came to India, they destroyed temples and the deities.
One of the problems I have is when you speak fast, I don't understand anything. I'm sorry, I'm just very slow.
Maharaj, sometimes we see that many people destroy deities and temples to destroy faith. So how do we understand?
They destroy deities to what?
To destroy faith.
They destroy the deities to destroy faith of the people. Deities are actually.
Who's doing that?
Many invaders who came to India, Maharaj, in past, they destroyed many temples and many
invaders who came to India.
Yeah, but they're not destroying Krishna. Krishna is there when the worship is there. When the worship's not there, it's not. He can leave at any time, and then it becomes just a form. That's all. He enters the deity, and the deity becomes. See, the deity is not eternal. When we do the prana pratishta, which is a ceremony to welcome the Lord into the deity, then from there on, the worship establishes the Lord. But then, if for some reason, somebody comes in and there's no worship, there's just offense or there's just destruction, they're not destroying the God. He's not destroyable by anything material. But it breaks the hearts of the devotees. That's what happens. And the devotees feel very unhappy when that happens. So we should prevent that. Make sure that doesn't happen. And therefore, we should have good security in our temples to make sure that nobody comes in to do anything like that. We should have a class of devotees who worship here, who are also martial artists who can fight. And then if people come in and if they try to do anything destructive, these devotees will prevent that. Prabhupada talks about that. He said, we have to protect the deities, we have to protect the devotees, we have to protect the temple, we have to protect, what else? The paraphernalia that we have for service. And therefore, there should be a class of devotees who are martial artists. And their job is to make sure that everything goes on nicely without any disturbance from the outside.
So shall we train some devotees in that way, Maharaj? Shall we train some devotees to become?
We're working on it. We're doing it in Mayapur right now. In fact, I have to go next week to get involved with meetings with some of these devotees. We're establishing a security team in Mayapur because they're afraid what's going to happen in Bangladesh will spill over into Mayapur. There's some talk about that. So now there's some urgency to establish not only the hired security, they have a hired security, but they're inefficient in dealing with outside influences. So we need something local. Devotees have to do it. So we have many devotees who are martial artists. They know how to fight, but they're not engaged. But we're not aggressors. We're protectors. The word kshatriya, shat means to protect, and triya means harm. So kshatriya means to protect from harm. Devotees are not aggressors, but they're protectors. Like that. That has to be there. Because many times, in America, our temples have been attacked many times. And we've had a lot of problems because of that, also in America. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
So if you talk to me about that, I'm very much in favor, and Prabhupada also, he talks about it. If you want to hear more about that, you can listen to Srila Prabhupada, July 11th, 1973, in London, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, verse number 8. Prabhupada talks about establishing Kshatriyas for our part of our Krishna conscious work is to make sure the devotees, deities, everything is protected. Especially in Kali Yuga, there's so many crazy people out there. Yeah. So.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Yeah, where are you? Okay.
Maharaj, my question is, Maharaj, like while worshipping the deity, what should be our mood? Like many times, like when I have this.
Chanadapi sunichena. Very humble. When you're worshiping, you're standing in front of Krishna, you should be very humble. The mood should be humility and wanting to serve the Lord in the nicest and best possible way. The mood of service and mood of humility. Yeah.
And Maharaj also, and what things we should focus, like our mind is like agitated while worshipping, so on what things we should like remember, or like what should the mind focus on while worshipping?
While worshipping?
Yes.
If you're worshipping, focus on what you're doing. In other words, keep your attention on Krishna, on the deity, on the activity you perform. So you're there, you have something to do, so do it nicely and plan ahead of time how to do it.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to stop here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm not in control. So I have to follow the protocol. So I guess many of you will be leaving today? Some of you, yeah. It's really, of course, most of the students left yesterday, right? You can see that by the attendance. Yeah, so we only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 9, maybe 6. Did we 5? Did we do 5 or 6? 5, I think we did. 5. So take some time. Those of you who are, have been following this particular verse and purports, continue to read and learn more about these 9 processes. Because it says here, it's part of Prahlad Maharaj's statement, one who has dedicated his life to the service of Krishna through these 9 methods should be understood to be the most learned person, for he has acquired complete knowledge. Mm-hmm. So everything is there in these 9 processes. And the most important is to hear and chant the glories of the Lord. Mm-hmm. These are the most important. And that's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, to establish Harinam Sankirtan and Bhagavad Dharma. Reading, hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam daily. Like that. Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
His Holiness Chandramauli Swami Maharaj ki jai. Hare Krishna, devotees who wish to purchase the books, they can take advantage. Hare Krishna. Maharaj, I heard the lecture from inside. It was on DT worship, I was doing DT worship.
Perfect. You were living what I was speaking. It was
It
good.
was very enlightening to be conscious of the DT worship process while doing the DT worship.
I can imagine what it would be like. You're hearing about what you're doing.
It was very
Oh, God, yeah. Haribo. You're going. You're leaving today? Stay. Oh, okay. Thank you for coming. It was really enlivening to see all of the students come and take part in a very enthusiastic way. It was really nice. Yeah.
So, do you believe in love of God actually, or is Krishna a person? Some people say that Krishna is in person, and we say Krishna is person. But yeah, I do believe in love.
You're a person. Person comes from person. The soul has a form also. Every soul has its own transcendental form, just like you have a material form. That's temporary. Your spiritual form is eternal. That's never lost. It's just forgotten, that's all. You have a form, a spiritual form also. And Krishna, he's the source of everything. He's the source of all the other forms. His form is eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss. Krishna is a person, but a spiritual person. We're also spiritual.